Following a decade of matrimony, my spouse declared, "You'll never truly be her father. Cease the act." I remained silent. The following day, I overheard the pair of them chuckling. Her and my stepchild. I simply gathered my belongings, put the residence on the market, and left behind a message. "You're correct. I'm not her actual father, and you're not my genuine kin. It's astonishing how a decade of your existence can vanish with one remark. A decade of preparing meals for school, assisting with assignments, attending meetings with educators, and instructing a youngster on bicycle riding. All of it evaporated in an instant. This occurred last Tuesday. My spouse, Karen, and I were engaged in a minor dispute regarding our stepchild, Ashley. She's 17 and desired to attend a gathering over the weekend that's 3 hours distant. I refused. It was during the academic period, and I wasn't familiar with the guardians. It was a typical paternal decision. Karen viewed it differently. She adopted this icy, unyielding expression in her gaze, an expression I'd noticed increasingly frequently. We stood in the cooking area, the identical space I'd renovated personally 3 years prior. She folded her arms and uttered it, her tone laced with 10 years of bitterness I hadn't completely grasped until then. "You'll never be her genuine father. Quit the pretense." I offered no reply. I didn't shout. I uttered nothing. I merely sensed something within me become still. It resembled a light being turned off. The segment of me that endeavored, the part that showed concern, the portion that perceived us as kin, it simply deactivated. I had encountered Karen when Ashley was 7 years old. Her natural father was an irresponsible individual absent from the scene since she was very young. For a decade, I served as the sole paternal figure she had experienced. I wasn't feigning. I was simply fulfilling the role of a parent. I pivoted, exited the cooking space, and proceeded to my work area in the storage shed. I remained there for several hours, merely arranging fasteners and polishing equipment, allowing the quiet to permeate. Karen didn't seek me out. When I eventually returned indoors late that evening, she was slumbering in our sleeping quarters. I rested on the sofa. The subsequent morning, I arose early to the noise of conversations from the cooking area. It was Karen and Ashley, and they were giggling. It wasn't merely a soft laugh. It was boisterous, derisive amusement. I stealthily approached the corridor and eavesdropped. "I can't believe you actually told him that," Ashley remarked, her tone infused with a sort of vicious delight that was unfamiliar to me. His expression, "Mom, it was hilarious." "Well, it's accurate," Karen responded, and then she chuckled once more. He required that revelation. All his petty regulations and his speeches, behaving as if he possesses some authority. He's merely the person who covers the expenses. That sealed it. That was the ultimate blow. It wasn't solely Karen. It involved both of them. A decade of my existence, my affection, my finances, and my dedication, and all I represented to them was a punchline. A financial source. An individual feigning a role he didn't hold. I retreated to the sitting room, my actions measured and intentional. The stillness within me had transformed into an odd form of serenity. I wasn't furious any longer. I was simply finished. I ascended to our sleeping chamber, located 2 of my former travel bags, and commenced filling them. I included my garments, my personal care items, the photographs of my folks from my bedside table. I abandoned the rest. I left the images of myself and Ashley at her initial sports match. I left the drinking vessel she presented to me for a paternal holiday that read, "World's Greatest Extra Father." It all seemed false now. As I packed, I placed a telephone call. I contacted a property agent, a fellow named Tom, for whom I'd performed some tasks a few years earlier. I informed him I required to dispose of my dwelling, and I needed it done swiftly. He was taken aback but stated he could prepare the documents by the afternoon and install a sale indicator in the lawn by dawn. I told him that suited me perfectly. The residence belonged to me. I had acquired it and settled half the loan prior to meeting Karen. My legal advisor had demanded a premarital agreement. A paper Karen had labeled offensive back then but endorsed regardless. It explicitly declared the dwelling as my pre-wedding asset. She was on the verge of discovering the significance of that document. I completed the packing and transported my bags downstairs. The dwelling was silent. They had departed for education and employment. I entered the cooking area and retrieved a writing pad from the miscellaneous compartment. I inscribed 7 terms. "You're accurate that I'm not her genuine father. and you're not my authentic kin. I placed the message on the cooking surface, precisely where they had been mocking me an hour before. I departed that dwelling and didn't glance rearward. I drove to my workplace, a modest area I leased for my building enterprise, and lingered in the vehicle area for a period. Then I began laboring. I contacted my legal advisor and explained the situation. He merely responded, "Excellent, it's overdue." I reached out to my financial institution and redirected my earnings to a fresh individual account. I transferred my personal reserves, every cent I had accumulated before the union, into that identical account. I retained in the shared account sufficient funds to handle the obligations for 1 month. Beyond that, it was her responsibility. That afternoon, I convened with the property agent and authorized the listing contract. He vowed to erect the indicator the next morning before they awoke. For the initial occasion in a decade, I experienced a feeling of liberation. I wasn't a feigned parent any longer. I wasn't a financial provider. I was simply myself. And I was commencing anew. I passed that evening on the sofa at my companion Mark's residence. The initial barrage of messages commenced around 4 in the afternoon, when Ashley would have returned from schooling. It was an image of the message with the basic inquiry, "What does this mean?" I didn't reply. An hour afterward, Karen began dialing. I allowed it to proceed to voice recording. She deposited 7 recordings consecutively. The initial was irate. "Contact me immediately. This isn't amusing." The following several were perplexed. "Where are you located? Are you attempting to frighten us?" The final ones were sheer alarm. "All right, you've demonstrated your argument. Simply return home and we can discuss this. This is insane. You can't simply depart." The next dawn, the genuine tempest arrived. My device began sounding at 7 a.m. It was Karen, and she was shouting, "There is a sale indicator in our front lawn." "Our lawn, John? What have you done?" I responded to the call, my tone utterly composed. "It's not our lawn, Karen. It's my lawn, and I'm disposing of my dwelling." "You can't accomplish that," she screamed. "I reside here. Ashley resides here. This is our residence." "No," I stated. "It's my residence. You were merely occupying it, and now I'm selling it. The agent indicates the market is strong, so you should likely begin searching for a new location to reside. You've got approximately 30 days, perhaps 60 if fortunate." I could hear her stammering, attempting to articulate phrases. "My legal advisor will demolish you for this. You can't simply evict us. I recommend you have your legal advisor examine our premarital agreement," I remarked, "particularly the section concerning preunion possessions. The dwelling is mine, Karen. The funds I earned prior to our marriage are mine. The enterprise I established is mine. You are eligible for half of what we accumulated jointly, which, following your expenditure patterns, isn't substantial. Farewell." I disconnected and restricted her contact. Then I restricted Ashley's contact. I understood this was merely the commencement. The subsequent intensification originated from her parent, Eileen. She dialed me that afternoon, and I erred by responding. She didn't even greet. She immediately began a rant about how I was a ruthless, unfeeling beast for deserting my kin. "You possess a child who adores you, John," she shouted. "No, Eileen, I don't," I responded. "I have a stepchild who giggled with her parent about how I was merely the individual who settles the accounts. There's a distinction. She's a youngster. She commits errors. She's 17, I amended. She's mature enough to comprehend her words, and Karen is definitely mature enough. For a decade, I provided them with everything. My time, my finances, my devotion. And in exchange, I was informed I was feigning. I'm finished feigning. You're casting them onto the pavement." She wept. "I'm disposing of my asset," I stated. "What Karen does next is her issue. She possesses a decent occupation. She can locate a rental unit. She's an adult female. It's time she began behaving as one." I disconnected before she could retort. The sense of entitlement in that kin was astounding. They truly thought I was required to supply a dwelling for 2 individuals who had publicly ridiculed and disrespected me. A few days afterward, I received a formal appearing electronic message. It was from a legal professional. Karen had acted quickly. The message was filled with juridical warnings. It required I promptly remove the dwelling from the market. It required I restore her access to our combined accounts. It required I cover her juridical costs and psychological anguish. It was a fabrication. I forwarded it to my own legal professional, who dispatched a reply a few hours later. His message was brief and direct. It included a duplicate of our endorsed premarital agreement. It included a record demonstrating that the initial payment and years of loan settlements had originated from my pre-union funds. Concluded with a straightforward phrase. Any additional efforts to assert possession of my client's distinct asset will be countered with a lawsuit for baseless legal action. The juridical warnings ceased following that. The dwelling received a proposal within a week exceeding the requested amount. The market truly was robust. The finalization was scheduled for 45 days hence. The timer was running for Karen and Ashley. The subsequent individual to contact was Ashley. She transmitted a communication via online platforms. I nearly erased it without perusing, but my inquisitiveness prevailed. It wasn't a regret. It was a catalog of requirements. Since you're disposing of the dwelling, you owe me for my higher education savings, she composed, and you must continue handling my vehicle installments, and my communication device is on your kin plan, so you can't remove me from that. I merely gazed at the communication. After all that transpired, after she had mocked me and labeled me a expense settler, she still believed I owed her something. The audacity was nearly admirable. I composed back a solitary reply. Ashley, I am not your genuine father. I am not accountable for your finances. You should converse with your parent about these matters. That's what authentic kin do. She responded with a sequence of offenses, labeling me a failure and an imposter, stating she never favored me regardless. I didn't reply. I simply captured an image of the dialogue and forwarded it to Karen with the heading, "You've instructed her effectively." Then I restricted Ashley on all mediums. The concluding few weeks prior to the finalization were an unusual type of tranquility, and I learned via a shared acquaintance that Karen was in distress, attempting to locate a rental that she could manage on her solitary income. Evidently, she had been examining locations far beyond her budget, still anticipating the way of life I had supplied. The actuality of her fresh economic circumstance was impacting her severely. This shared acquaintance, Sarah, contacted me a few days before the finalization. She sounded uncomfortable. "Hey, John. Karen's been contacting me," panicking, Sarah stated. "She desired me to inquire if you'd contemplate providing her some of the funds from the dwelling sale merely to assist her stabilize. Did she inform you why I'm disposing of the dwelling?" I questioned. "She mentioned you two had an argument and you reacted excessively." I merely chuckled. "She informed me I'm not Ashley's genuine father and that I should cease feigning. Then I overheard her and Ashley mocking how I'm merely the individual who covers the expenses. So I resolved to cease covering the expenses. The premarital agreement is explicit, Sarah. The dwelling is mine. She'll receive her portion of our marital possessions, and that's it. I'm not a financial institution." Sarah was silent for a moment. "Wow." She omitted that detail. "I'm sorry, John. I won't trouble you again." The day of the finalization, my legal professional managed everything. That I authorized the documents in his workplace and the funds were transferred to my fresh individual account. After my legal professional deducted his charges, I had him issue a payment to Karen for her lawful share of the marital possessions. It was a decent sum, sufficient for an initial payment on a modest condominium or to handle rent for several years. But it wasn't the windfall she imagined she was obtaining. It was a complete separation. My legal professional dispatched her the payment via delivery service. Along with a concluding set of separation documents, I didn't wish to encounter her again. That evening, I was at my fresh rental unit, a modest 2-bedroom space I was leasing in the city center. It was vacant except for a sleeping pad on the ground and a few containers. But it belonged to me. My device rang. It was an unfamiliar contact. I responded. It was Karen. She must have acquired a new device. She wasn't shouting. Her tone was subdued, overcome. "I received the payment," she stated, "and the documents. Okay, I responded. "Is this truly the conclusion, John?" she inquired. 10 years. You're simply discarding it all due to one foolish remark?" "It wasn't one remark, Karen," I stated. "It was a decade of you harboring that sentiment and merely not voicing it. It was you and Ashley mocking me. It was you perceiving me as a financial source. The remark didn't terminate our union. It merely disclosed that we never truly possessed one." She began to sob. "What are we expected to do? The rental units I can manage are minuscule. Ashley is enraged. She must attend a local institution now. You've devastated our existences. No, I stated, and for the initial time I experienced a surge of fury. You did. You possessed a man who cherished your child as his own. You possessed a lovely dwelling. You possessed a companion who backed you. You possessed a kin, and you discarded it because you believed you could improve. Now you get to discover if you were correct. I disconnected the device and restricted the new contact. I surveyed my vacant rental unit. It wasn't extensive, but it was authentic. And it was entirely mine. The subsequent phase of this chaos commenced about a month afterward. I received another call from an unfamiliar contact. I nearly disregarded it, but I was anticipating a call from a vendor, so I accepted it. A male's voice, coarse in texture, inquired if I was John. I affirmed I was. My name is Rick, he stated. I'm Ashley's parent, her biological parent. Karen contacted me last week. It appears I need to learn your perspective on the matter. My initial notion was that this was another snare. Karen, in desperation, had located the irresponsible parent to employ as a tool against me. I consented to meet him, but on my conditions. A communal location, a eatery in the city center, the next dawn. I desired an observer, so I requested my companion Mark to occupy a nearby seat, just in case. Rick was a distance transporter, merely traveling through the area. He appeared fatigued, but he met my gaze directly when he clasped my hand. He informed me Karen had contacted him unexpectedly, weeping, informing him I was a harmful beast who had cast her and Ashley onto the streets and was attempting to leave them destitute. He stated he was en route to challenge me when he resolved to investigate a bit first. He discovered I had a positive standing in the community, that my enterprise was reliable. It didn't align with the narrative she was presenting. So I narrated everything to him. I described the previous decade. I described the remark and about overhearing them chuckling in the cooking area. I displayed him the captured image of Ashley's message requiring higher education funds and vehicle installments. He merely shook his head, appearing repulsed. I was irresponsible, he stated, his tone lowered. I abandoned them and I accept that. I was a poor parent. But I never feigned to be something I wasn't. What they did to you after you stepped in and performed the role I didn't, that's simply harsh. He informed me he had no plan to reunite with Karen. He merely desired to encounter his child. He inquired about her true nature. I was truthful. I informed him she was intelligent, humorous, and sporty, but that her parent and grandparent had instilled in her a sense of privilege. I informed him she was a decent youngster deep down, but she had been taught to view individuals for what they could provide. We conversed for nearly 2 hours. It was one of the oddest discussions of my life. At the conclusion, he expressed gratitude for my honesty. He stated he was going to visit Ashley, but not to rescue her from me. He was going to deliver her a dose of reality that was long past due. A week afterward, Rick contacted me again. He stated his discussion with Ashley had been a catastrophe. He had attempted to clarify to her that the world owed her nothing, that she had disrespected the only paternal figure she had known, and that she needed to express regret. She had merely yelled at him, labeled him a failure for deserting her, and informed him she didn't require another imposter parent in her existence. Karen's ultimate, frantic maneuver was an assault on my enterprise. She discovered the identity of one of my largest customers, a construction firm managed by an astute female named Diana. Karen left a lengthy, wandering voice recording on Diana's workplace device, asserting I was mentally unbalanced, undergoing a complicated separation, and that I couldn't be relied upon to oversee a venture. Diana contacted me right away. This was a grave issue. My standing is paramount in my field. I inquired if I could convene with her personally. I entered her workplace, seated myself, and outlined the facts. My former spouse is dissatisfied with the conditions of our premarital agreement, I stated. She is attempting to harm my standing to obtain advantage. It will not impact the venture. My private affairs are personal, but I can guarantee that my occupational obligations are firm. Diana merely nodded. I've been in this industry for a considerable time, John. I recognize a resentful former partner when I encounter one. Don't concern yourself. Just maintain the excellent performance. Karen's effort to demolish my means of living had failed. In truth, it had likely strengthened my occupational connection with Diana. The most recent information I have, Karen and Ashley are residing in a modest, 2-bedroom rental across the community. Karen had to secure a secondary, temporary position to balance the budget. Ashley is employed at a quick-service eatery to accumulate funds for local higher education. Rick, her authentic parent, sends her a small amount of money when possible, but he informed me he includes a message with each transfer that reads, "This is what occurs when you undervalue decent individuals." I encountered Karen once several months ago at the market. She was accompanied by some new male who appeared already weary of her. She noticed me, and for a moment I thought she might speak, but I simply offered her a courteous acknowledgement, turned my shopping cart, and proceeded down the adjacent passageway. I didn't experience resentment. I didn't experience anything whatsoever. I was merely an individual purchasing provisions, and she was merely an unfamiliar person. Existence stabilized into a fresh routine after that. I concentrated on my enterprise, resumed physical exercise, and spent weekends exploring trails with my canine. The tranquility was remarkable that I hadn't comprehended how much underlying tension I had endured for a decade until it disappeared. The perpetual necessity to handle Karen's dispositions, to attempt to bond with a stepchild who viewed me as a barrier, the incessant criticism from her parent, it was like a constant hum I had become so accustomed to, I no longer perceived it. Now, all I perceived was quietude. Approximately 6 months after the separation was completed, I received a call at my workplace. My helper said there was a male named Dave on the line who needed to discuss a personal issue related to Karen. The name didn't register initially, and then it struck me. That was the name of the male I'd seen her with at the market. My initial impulse was to instruct my helper to disconnect. I didn't desire additional conflict, but inquisitiveness triumphed. I told her to connect him. His tone was strained. "John? My name is Dave. I know this is an unusual call. I obtained your enterprise contact from a builder who worked on your former dwelling. I'm the male. Well, I'm Karen's partner." "Okay," I responded, reclining in my seat. "Look, fellow, I'm not attempting to initiate anything," he stated, his tone lowering. I feel like I'm losing my mind, and I have a suspicion you're the only individual on earth who would comprehend. Can I purchase you a drink? 5 minutes of your time? That's all I'm requesting." There was a desperation in his tone that I identified. It was the sound of a sensible male trying to comprehend an illogical circumstance. Against my wiser judgment, I consented. We convened at a serene tavern on the opposite side of the community later that week. Dave appeared precisely as I recalled from the market. Exhausted, he informed me he'd met Karen via a matchmaking application about 4 months after I had departed. He stated she was enchanting initially. She narrated a tragic tale about her wicked former husband who had deserted her and her child, leaving them destitute after she had devoted her life to him. Dave, being an honorable male who had experienced a separation himself, sympathized with her. He stated the initial few months were positive. Then the warning signs began emerging. Commenced with finances. She was perpetually complaining about being impoverished, yet she was continually acquiring new attire, visiting costly beauty parlors. He began providing her loans, first minor sums, then larger ones. He covered the cost of a fresh set of wheels for her vehicle. He handled her rent for a month when she claimed her work hours were reduced. Then came her kin. He stated her parent, Eileen, was a horror. She was always present at their rental, critiquing him, making indirect aggressive remarks about his occupation and informing Karen she merited superior. Ashley, he stated, treated him as if he were unseen unless she desired something. He'd provided her substantial amounts for event passes, fresh footwear, and evenings out with her companions. "It's like they perceive me as a mobile money dispenser," he stated, shaking his head. "And if I refuse or even pause, Karen accuses me of lacking concern. She says I'm behaving just like you. I merely sipped my drink." Sounds recognizable. "The ultimate trigger was last week," he proceeded. "I returned home and there was a correspondence on the table from a lending firm. It was directed to her, but it was unsealed. I suppose she forgot to conceal it. She had initiated a lending account in my name as an approved user without informing me. It was exhausted. Nearly $10,000 in obligations. Attire, relaxation days, meals with her parent. I challenged her and she didn't even express remorse. She stated I was reacting excessively, that she intended to repay it. But I know she lacks the means to do that. He met my gaze directly. "She informed me you were the beast." But listening to her speak, the way she distorts things, I realized the narrative probably wasn't that straightforward. So I conducted some investigation. I conversed with that shared acquaintance, Sarah. She narrated the authentic story. About the premarital agreement. About what you overheard them saying in the cooking area. I merely nodded. I didn't need to contribute anything. He had uncovered the truth independently. So I'm inquiring of you, Dave stated. Am I insane? Or is this simply her nature? That's her nature, I affirmed. And that's what her parent instilled in her. And that's what Ashley is evolving into. They view males as a commodity. When one depletes, they advance to the next. I'm sorry you became entangled in it. He appeared relieved. Like a male who had just been informed his condition wasn't imaginary. What did you do? He questioned. How did you escape? I simply halted, I stated. I halted paying. I halted feigning. I halted concerning myself with their opinions of me. The moment you sever the funds, you'll witness their true essence. But you must be prepared for the conflict that ensues. They will attempt to demolish your standing. They will label you a beast to anyone who listens. You just have to be ready for it. We concluded our drinks and clasped hands. He expressed gratitude again. I advised him to be cautious. As I exited the tavern, I felt an odd sense of compassion. Not for Karen, but for him. He was at the start of a complicated, unpleasant path that I had just completed. That discussion was the authentic conclusion for me. It verified that my choice wasn't an exaggeration. It was a preservation mechanism. Karen hadn't altered, and she never would. She was merely seeking a new provider. A few months following that, I received a message from a contact I didn't recognize. It was from Ashley. It was extensive, and it wasn't a requirement. It was the nearest approximation to a regret I believe she could compose. She informed me that Dave had departed from her parent. He had evidently followed my guidance, recorded everything, and terminated it neatly. He had even warned of pursuing legal action for the lending fraud, which caused Karen to retreat instantly. Ashley stated that observing her parent undergo the identical pattern with another male had been enlightening. She stated that her authentic parent, Rick, had been communicating with her, compelling her to confront some difficult realities. I was a spoiled child, she wrote. You were kind to me, and I treated you poorly because my parent and grandparent told me I could. I'm sorry. I know it's overdue, but I just wanted to voice it. I contemplated it for a considerable time before I responded. Part of me desired to disregard it. But another part of me recalled the 7-year-old youngster who had been so thrilled to display her academic report. I messaged back, I value that, Ashley. I wish you success. It was all that required saying. Existence is tranquil now. I disposed of my enterprise last year to a bigger firm and retired prematurely. I acquired a modest dwelling on several acres of terrain in the rural area. My canine is aged now, but he adores the expanse. I engage in fishing and labor in my woodworking area. I meet my companion Mark on the weekends. It's a straightforward existence, but it's genuine. The conflict is absent. Constructing my own existence on my own conditions was the only endeavor that truly counted. I poured a spirit and savored the quietude.